Hello and welcome to this very special episode of Frankly Speaking. And joining me tonight is Neil deGrasse Tyson, the man who's popular astrophysicist. He's an author and he's very popular in India because he's the man who met with Prime Minister Narendra Modi a year or two ago, and the man who talks about India's ambitious space plans. Thank you very much, Neil Tyson, for joining me. And I want to begin with the book you once wrote and 5 years ago, and you congratulated NASA on its 60th birthday, and you said there's a lot to be done, and dreams of a nation actually are fueled by a pipeline of ambitious students eager to become scientists, engineers, and technologists. Do you think your dream is coming true, not just in the United States, but across the world?
Yes, definitely. And just before I continue, let me welcome you to my city. You are there in Times Square. This is my native town. I was born and raised there, so just welcome. And I'm delighted to be doing this with you, standing in the middle of one of the big arteries of New York City. And I want to emphasize that when people explore what policy, what ideas, what dreams can drive a nation's ambitions, space exploration always works its way to the top of that, because we all spend time looking up and wondering. We've been doing this long before we had the technology to give us access to space. And you realize when one of your citizens goes into space, they become a local hero. And people ask, well, who are they? What did they study in school? Maybe I want to be them. And then you find out that it's not just space and engineering that matter to going into space. There's biology that relates to the human condition while we are in space. There's geology, except it would be Marsology or Moonology, the study of the rocks and the formation and the history of these cosmic objects. So there's all manner of technology and engineering that comes together to achieve these goals. And each one of those fields has the potential, and has demonstrated it to be so, has the potential to create new economic opportunities for a nation. Because as we all know, innovations in science and technology are the engines of tomorrow's economy. This is true no matter where you are in the world. And even advances in farming have come about from advances in technology applied to it. And so a country that ignores a future in space is in part ignoring the health and the vitality of their future economy.
Well said. You're a fan of the term space race. Do you believe that this space race is real, and do you think this competition is healthy?
Yeah, the term space race, of course, tracks back to the 1950s and 60s, when the United States and the Soviet Union were enemies, all right? We were cultural enemies, we were political enemies, we were military enemies with these Cold War satellite conflicts around the world. And so, yes, that was a race. Today, however, especially, you haven't mentioned it yet, but I'm sure you will, the Artemis Accords, which is an agreement that has many countries. I haven't checked the latest number of how many countries have signed it, but the number is growing, and it is a detailed plan for how we will all gain access to space together, according to whatever is the capacity of a nation to participate. Okay, not every country, depending on their wealth or their history, can put somebody on the moon, but they might have some technologies, some engineering that can contribute to it. And then you have a collaborative effort going into space. And it seems to me that if human civilization is to survive itself, okay, and not put an end to its own existence, we're going to have to collaborate on this frontier because it is an infinite frontier, and we know that the benefits of this frontier can have great value to life here on Earth. So I don't think of it as a race. I think of it as, yes, there's a little bit of that going on. I think of it more as who's got the best ideas right now, and let's see what we can do with that. Because the Artemis Accords are all about the sharing of data, no secrets. If you discover something on the moon, with your mission, you will share it with other countries so that their mission can make sure that they don't make the same mistake or that they can improve on it. That's how science progresses. That's how we have the civilization we have today, by the public access to information that tells you what this unknown frontier is going to bring you.
Absolutely. I really do hope that there is more cooperation in space than there is on Earth right now, with many wars being fought in many parts of the world. And sometimes you wonder, the need for all of this. But let me ask you, what is your assessment of India's own space mission, especially Chandryaan-3, India's moon mission, which was the first time that first country that landed on the south pole of the moon in August last year. How do you see that, and how do you assess, since then, what we've learned from this moon mission?
So let me unpack that, because you make some very important points. So first of all, there's an old joke in aerospace, which is it's easy to land somewhere. You just want to land safely, okay? So India was not the first to land on the South Pole. It's the first to land softly and safely. Russia had a failed mission. There have been other failed missions. So that's the real achievement. Not that India landed on the moon, but that India landed safely in the South Pole region. And I can't overemphasize the value of that region of the moon. If you give you a moment, I'd like to explain. On the moon, the sun does rise and set everywhere. There is no dark side of the moon, first of all. But a day lasts about a month. They have like 14, 15 days of sunlight, 15 days of night. As you go towards the poles, the sun's arc in the sky gets lower and lower. Same is true on Earth. All right, if you go to the polar regions, the sun doesn't get very high in the sky. It stays low from when it rises all the way to when it sets. Same is true on the moon. If you go to the South Pole, the South Pole, the sun remains so low that there are craters with crater rims where sunlight never reaches the basin of the crater, ever. And they're called cold traps. These are places where literally the sun don't shine. And why is that important? Because we all know, as is evidenced from all the craters, the sun gets hit by asteroids, by comets. So does Earth, but our atmosphere protects us. That's why we don't look like the moon. But all these craters, what happens if a comet hits? A comet has water. The water scatters onto the lunar surface. If the sun hits that area, it evaporates. But if the water falls into the bottom of one of these craters that never see sunlight, then the water stays and will stay there for billions of years. And so we suspect, and we have good evidence to confirm, that at the bottoms of these craters near the poles, there's a reservoir of water molecules. And water is very important. Of course, you need it to drink. You would need it if you had any kind of agriculture in a future colony. But also, we remember that water is H2O. That's the chemical symbol for water. If you separate those and put them in separate tanks, and then you bring them together, it's rocket fuel. People think of, does you have to have gasoline or kerosene? No, water is rocket fuel. Those two atoms separated, that takes energy to do that, by the way, but when you bring them back together, it's what we call exothermic, chemically. Exothermic, it releases energy. And you know what the exhaust is? Steam. So, if you go to the moon, to where the water is, you have life-preserving water, you have rocket fuel, you could sustain a future colony with just a few extra supplies. It is the first step to the colonization of the moon.
Well, we're looking to build a few colonies there, but let me examine some of the findings that have come. Alpha particle X-ray spectrometer has found on the lunar surface the fact that the terrain around Chandrayaan-3 landing site is quite uniform. The topsoil around the moon's south pole contains a strong composition of minerals which form part of the lower layer, and the moon's crust was formed layer by layer, where 80% or more of the upper crust is believed to contain iron, magnesium, and sodium-rich rocks. What do you believe these implications really show in terms of, what are the immense possibilities of stuff that can be done on the moon?
I love it. So imagine some space civilization somewhere else sending a probe to Earth, and let's say they land in the Sahara Desert, okay? And that's their entire information about Earth. Well, they would get a wrong impression of what the rest of Earth was like, because 2/3 of the rest of Earth's surface is water. There are other parts that are frozen and have ice, and there are other parts where we have civilization. And so if you only land in one place, as we've been doing for decades, you only have one little bit of information. And what you want to land in as many places as you can so that you can understand the total composition all across the surface. The compositions that you listed there are what we would expect given our understanding of the origin of the moon. And the origin of the moon, our best understanding is that there was a Mars-sized protoplanet that sideswiped Earth and scooped out huge parts of Earth's crust that then went into orbit around the Earth. For a while, Earth would have had a ring, like Saturn has rings. And this material rapidly coalesced to form our moon. So our moon would be built primarily on the material of our crust. And our crust has a lot of silicon in it, silicon dioxide. There's some iron veins that come through, iron ore. And you just look at that and you say, yes, we have confirmed this. This is good. We need to know this as we continue to explore the lunar surface. And the alpha proton X-ray spectrometer, it sounds like some weapon that Batman has, right? It sounds like it's out of a comic book, but it's a very precise tool to measure the chemical compositions of solid minerals. And so, yeah. And also, I know in India's future, their missions, I forgot which mission specifically, they want to go to the moon, take the natural, not just the water, but the minerals, and try to make things out of the minerals. And if you can make tools, you make structures, you don't need to bring those materials from Earth, because it's called in situ, NASA calls it in situ resource utilization, ISRU. And if you can make things where you're going, you don't have to bring it. And your payload can be used for other things that cannot be duplicated at your destination.
Absolutely, and that's the second phase that Prime Minister Modi and his government have already announced as the future plans in its space strategy, especially the mission Moon. Let me ask you, how was your conversation with Prime Minister Modi when you met him, and what kind of discussions did you have as far as India's plan as far as space research goes? Were there any interesting insights that you could share with our audiences back home in India?
Yeah, so the Prime Minister did come through New York City. Again, that's my hometown. And I met with him. Let me make that clear. He decided to meet with me. I didn't summon him. He put in the request. And of course, I'm a world leader. You take any opportunity that's offered to meet and greet a world leader who is shaping geopolitics. And so I definitely um, uh, uh, agreed to that encounter. We met downtown, and we spent maybe 20 minutes to half an hour in conversation. And over that time, he shared with me his space plans. All right, he wants to put in education centers around the country to to uh, to excite children to think about space and science and math and technology. And of course, I didn't need to remind him of the significant historical value of the Hindu scholarship that has occurred in the centuries past, major advances in mathematics. Of course, as we know, we get our zero from uh, uh, I forgot exactly when, it would have been 1,200 years ago, something like that. The zero, very important in all of math, comes from that culture. But I also commented that the Muslim culture in the golden age of Islam also has a lot of contributions. And the mixture of children of all backgrounds, if they're in the same room, you can say, look at all these great things that these cultures have done in the past. Let's bring it all together as an instrument of peace and of prosperity as we bring it together. So we had very good agreement on this about how you would have these discovery centers. He had maybe had a different term for it, but that's what we would call it here in the United States, a discovery center, a place where children can go and it can feed their curiosities, because every child is curious. They're turning over rocks and looking behind trees. That's something they're born with. It's only as adults as we kind of lose this urge to question or to explore the unknown. So if you can keep it going in children, you know what a scientist is? An adult scientist is a child who never grew up. We still have our curiosity about the world.
Absolutely. Let me also ask you, Mr. Tyson. Elon Musk's SpaceX has successfully completed a 5-day mission, including the world's first commercial spacewalk. NASA has called it a giant leap forward, but your comments that SpaceX hasn't done what NASA already has generated quite a bit of buzz, including from Elon Musk himself, who said Tyson should wait and see what else SpaceX has in store. First things first, do you think what has been done by this SpaceX is groundbreaking because it's a private endeavor?
So there are several moving parts here. So let me clarify. When many people think of the space frontier, they think of doing something, reaching to a place in space that we have never reached before. Soft landing on the South Pole, that's extending a space frontier. If we send astronauts to Mars, that's extending a space frontier. If we mine asteroids in ways that would be extending a space frontier. If you take cargo to a space station, something NASA has done before, that is not extending a space frontier. However, it does extend a technological frontier. One of SpaceX's greatest contributions to this enterprise is, can you do it for less money? Okay? Can you do it? Can you have reusable crafts? That's part of what it would be to do it for less. I mean, think about it. If every time we flew an Airbus 380 intercontinentally, and you got off the plane and they shoved it off a cliff and then brought out a new one, that would make that trip very expensive. Okay, so if rockets are not reused, the expense of this enterprise becomes intractable. So the contributions that SpaceX is bringing to this is not only the cheaper cost, but as the world knew, we had 2 astronauts, quote, stranded. They weren't. I don't think of them as stranded because there were 6 or 7 other astronauts on the space station with them. But the space vessel that brought them there was shown to be faulty. Oh my gosh, what does NASA do? Can we save them? No. We knock on Elon's door. Elon, do you have a SpaceX that can finish this mission? Yes, he does. This is the future of space. This is space becomes a routine thing, and SpaceX is making space routine, and we can think of that as a frontier of space. How much people are talking about space, how much people are engaged in space. We can think of that as a cultural frontier that has been grabbed and improved and celebrated within the SpaceX culture. My skepticism is that I don't see SpaceX being the first to send astronauts to Mars. That is very expensive, as an example, that's very expensive. I can see a government doing that. And maybe the government says, oh, we don't have a spaceship. Who has one? And Elon says, I have one. Okay. Or India says, we have one. And so then that becomes part of the collaboration of us all into space. So I look forward to all of the frontiers that will be breached here, because we live on this tiny dot called Earth, and there's the rest of the universe. Earlier, you commented about whether we need to do any of this. No, we don't need to. Let's go to the caves 30,000 years ago, and we have the youth, the cave youth, looking out the cave door, and they see mountains and valleys and streams and fruit on vines, and then they want to explore it. But they said, we need permission from our elders, and they go back, and the elder says, no, we have cave problems first that we have to solve before you leave the cave. That's what people sound like to me when they say, we have Earth problems we need to solve first. Meanwhile, we're sitting in the middle of a vast, infinite universe with unlimited resources. And the faster we can get access to that, then the less provincial, the less insular, the less tribal we will be here on Earth.
Absolutely, and we need to do that. We need to push the frontiers and create multiple options for people on Earth. With exploring more of space. But you did talk about the stranded Butch Wilmore and Sunita Williams waiting for the SpaceX to come and rescue them, which may not be earlier than early 2025. What do you think about this, and what do you think are going to be the ramifications on the health of missions, as well as on the health of individuals stuck there for periods that they had not bargained for?
Yeah, remember that these people are professional astronauts, okay? They're professionals. So, and they've spent time in space before. There are people who spend a lot of money just to experience going into space. Now, they get the call from NASA that says, you have to spend more time in space than we originally bargained for. Do you think they're upset? In my podcast, Star Talk, we interviewed Sunita Williams on the space station. And she made it very clear. I don't know if it is posted yet, but it should post very soon, if not already. She made it very clear they have plenty to do there. And they have other friends, okay, that are stranded to me. Stranded to me was in the movie The Martian, the character Mark Watney was left for dead on Mars. He was stranded. He didn't know if he could survive from day to day. There was nobody else around. We had to send another rescue mission, but it would take more than a year. That's stranded. But to be on a space station where there's other astronauts and there's food and there's water, yes, emotionally, you have to convert from an 8-day mission to a 7-month mission, or however long it will be. Yes, but these are physically and emotionally strong people who we select as astronauts. And that's true for any country who is sending their people up. So I have no concern. I'm not worried about them at all. And we're living in the future where NASA says, who else has a rocket? Oh, SpaceX has a rocket. Come on in. That's how you know you're living in the future, when you have options.
Are you going to get onto a SpaceX spaceship anytime soon?
I used to joke that the only time I'll get into somebody's spacecraft, let's take Elon's spacecraft, is after he has flown his mother successfully. Then I'll know it's safe to take. Um, I'm an astrophysicist, so when I think of space, I think of the galaxy and the universe. And so, but we've all been conditioned to think of space as going to orbit around the Earth. So that's not spacey enough for me. I would want to have a destination. So if there's a ship going to the moon, Mars, or beyond, then I'll sign up. And I'll get a good music
Okay.
account and a video streaming account and maybe bring my family. I'm all good. But just to go in orbit around Earth, it's hard for me as an astrophysicist to get excited about that. And I can quantify this for you very simply. If you take Earth and make it the size of a schoolroom globe, the space station
Okay.
orbits 1 centimeter above its surface. The space station and Elon Musk's orbital rocket, 1 centimeter above its surface. And the Bezos and Branson rockets that go up and down, they go the thickness of 2 dimes. Dime is our thinnest coin. That's how high above Earth they're going. I have to go somewhere. I don't want to just boldly go where hundreds have gone before. Send me to a new place and then I'll sign up.
Okay, and if Elon Musk were to ask you out for dinner right here in New York City, what would your answer be?
Oh, of course, of course. I've known him. We're not like drinking buddies, but we've met and we've known each other for, I guess, now almost 2 decades. And by the way, I was told, because I didn't see everybody else in who your prime minister had audience with in New York. I was told that Elon Musk had visited him just before I got there. So ships crossed in the day when that had happened. But yes, I would definitely have. He's a powerful guy who has big visions on what space will bring to Earth, and also he made electric cars a daily subject of media coverage and people's ambitions for the future of transportation. Of course, he says all these other things that are just, by many measures, just weird or different or whatever. And I can separate those. Okay. I think I'm mature enough. I can say, okay, Elon, I don't agree with half of this other stuff, but this stuff is good. Let's talk about that. I can do that. And I think a mature society should be able to have those kinds of conversations with people who, in some circles, are controversial.
Absolutely. But before I end, let me just ask you, Mars is known to be inhospitable. The temperatures are known to be extremely low. There's high levels of radiation. There's lesser gravity. There is, on Earth, the atmosphere is known to be very thin with very little oxygen. What's your prophecy? Life possible on Mars anytime soon?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, by the way. I assume you mean extraterrestrial life, not just human life there, I suppose. All right. So I can address both. Mars has evidence of once long ago having running liquid water. There are riverbeds that show meandering patterns. There are floodplains that I'm sure in the Ganges there. If you look from satellite, you'll see places where the water has left its mark on the land, on the terrain, where it floods, where it comes out into the ocean, where it begins. We see this on Mars, except it's all bone dry today, completely dry. So the water was once there, and when it was once there, could Mars have once had life? Everywhere on Earth we find water, we find life. Even the Dead Sea. The fact that it's called the Dead Sea meant it was named by people who didn't have a microscope to see the microorganisms that are thriving there. So we are hopeful or expectant that the evidence of water having once been on Mars, and maybe it's down in a permafrost beneath the surface or in an aquifer. That's why we're looking for life on Mars. And if it's below the surface, the radiation doesn't matter. And there's a lot of life that doesn't require oxygen. It's called anaerobic life, thrives without oxygen. The bacteria in our guts, in our intestines, does not want oxygen. It does not care about oxygen. Okay? So life is diverse. And the more we learn about how diverse life is, the more different destinations, the more different locations in the solar system and beyond, we can imagine life thriving. Now, in terms of humans going there, you're right. We have to terraform Mars. Elon wants to terraform Mars, which is my favorite word of the last 30 years. You turn something that's not Earth into Earth. And then you just step off your spaceship, take a deep breath, and pitch tent and live. We cannot control our own climate, much less the climate of an entire other planet. I think that is a very distant dream. I don't mind it. It's always important to dream, but it's not a realistic near-term solution. So that anybody who goes to Mars, I think it's just an excursion. It could be a vacation, but you're going to come back.
Well said. Thank you very much, Neil deGrasse Tyson, for giving us an insight into what really are the tremendous possibilities in outer space, in our universe. But before I let you go, I just want to know, do astrophysicists also have an insight into what's going to happen in elections? Because in America, nobody seems to know which way the elections are going. I thought, why not bounce that off you? Maybe astrophysicists understand this better than anybody else.
Well, in my field and science in general, we are very well trained in statistics and probability, and in ways that the public should be, but isn't. And so that concerns me because many people make decisions about their life, their health, their wealth, their security with an incomplete knowledge of risk and probability and statistics. All I can tell you is that in the American system, the reason why it comes down to two candidates that are always sort of neck and neck is because the system weeds out people who are only getting 10% of the vote or 15% of the vote. We don't have a pluralistic election. So that's why the process winnows the candidates down to two that are sort of close to each other, and then which makes practically every election a close one, where it wouldn't otherwise be if people didn't just drop out of the race or command some of the vote and keep it. As I understand many in Parliament, certainly in the UK, I'm less familiar with the Indian Parliament in this. So it's winner takes all, and so that's the contest that's going on. No, but we don't have special insights. We have understanding of statistics, but in the physical sciences, we have no understanding of human behavior. And therein,
well,
that is a bigger
thought the
mystery
planetary
of the universe.
alignments would give you a sense.
No, the planets and the rest of the universe. News alert: the planets and the universe do not care about you, okay, or me, or anybody else. We want them to care. We want to believe they care, but I assure you, they don't care. As Shakespeare said, the fault, dear Brutus, lies not in the stars, but within ourselves.
Well said, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Always a pleasure speaking with you. And I know many Indians who follow you, not just on social media, but what you have literally discovered and the barriers that you have simplified for people to understand space, to understand our universe. Thank you very much for joining me, and thank you very much for all those insights and always being such a sport when you speak with us. And many Indians are huge fans of Neil deGrasse Tyson. Thank you very much.